Hello! I fixed this. Welcome to Levels Plus Whenever, episode 108. I didn't expect to have yet another episode for you again this month, but Taito fell into tradition and announced that they'll be doing their Arcade Memories Volume 3 announcement in a couple weeks. So I want to talk about Taito arcade games that could show up on the Egret 2 Mini in the near future. I'm very excited. I spent way too much time on it. Let's get into it. As I said at the top, we've got Egret 2 Mini news, which is enough reason for me to break my video hiatus and record something. And that news is Volume 3 of Egret 2 Mini's Arcade Memories SD cards will be announced on August 22nd. It's only 2 weeks away. And we know that there's 10 games, thanks to what Taito has posted about it. Which, unfortunately, unless you read Japanese, you won't be able to get a sense of it. But this is a Google translation. 10 titles. Somewhere, not in this particular post, they have said that the games will be from 1982 to 1995. They also say that there will be some new information revealed on the program. I don't really know what that means. But anyway, we'll be reacting to that way too early in the morning, much like how I'm recording this video. The funs of dancing around summer heat. But in the past, I have written up some thoughts on what games I'd like to see included on the Egret 2 Mini. A lot of what I would personally like that I've played of Taito's arcade backlog is already on there. So it's kind of like discovery mode. So what I've done is I have taken a list from Wikipedia of the majority of, because it's not 100% got every single thing. Adventure Canoe, for example, isn't listed. And I know that game came out because it's on the Egret already. So there's probably a couple others that didn't make it into Wikipedia's list for whatever reason. But at the very least, we'll have most of Taito's arcade output from 1982 to 1995. There's some third-party connections here. If I could find out easily, as in not spending more than the time I already spent on it, which was probably a good hour and a half to 2 hours, I put that information in the dev partner slot. So, for example, Mr. Do here in this row, that's owned by Universal, not the broadcasting conglomerate under Comcast, but a different Universal in Japan that also owns Zeru's IP, which means Shadow Hearts. They still exist as far as I can tell. There's a couple that I'm not sure, like AW Electronics, and then there was a couple that as I went down, I just kind of stopped putting information because it's like, I don't even know if that developer's still alive or if it looked like Taito had already published it before. Another caveat with this is that Taito's last survey that they sent out said that they were looking for third-party suggestions as well. I don't know what that means. So that's why some of these games are included, because they did publish some games from third parties, like Irem and Technos at the time. and Toa Plan at the time. So those are all here as well. Things marked in blue are already on the Egret Too Many, one way or another. Things marked in red, those are Arcade Archives games that aren't on the Egret Too Many. There's a couple other designations in here, I'm getting to them. Italic text, so like with Darius here. That means that it's got more than one monitor. So odds are good that it won't be on the Egret Too Many because the Egret only has one monitor. This green bar, Galactic Storm, has been soft confirmed for the Egret Too Many Arcade Memories 3 thanks to a sound clip that die-hard Taito heads were able to identify because they play a lot more than I have. I consider myself a pretty die-hard Taito fan myself, but I haven't played a lot. So I'm always looking forward to trying out new stuff. The last thing I want to point out is Vertexter here. This was unreleased, but there's video of it, and quite a few of the Taito heads are really hoping this is one of the games that's included because it looked really promising. It just never got released. And they have done that with Kaiser Knuckles advanced version that I don't know if that got actually released. So there is precedent for that. But there's 295 games. So what I'm going to attempt to do is briefly touch on the ones that are third party, then briefly touch on the arcade archives that are available, and then attempt to talk about some games that I would like to see. Again, this is going to be complicated because of just the nature of how many games there are in this time frame, and we're only getting 9 additional ones on top of Galactic Storm. My third party, Mr. Do's probably the biggest one in the earliest days of Taito, and would be a pretty good pick. It was an arcade success for them, but like I said, it's owned by Universal, and they've been pretty stodgy about their games output and IP for quite a while now. So I don't necessarily expect it, but it would be one of the better third-party choices that Taito actually published. I'm skipping the pit because I don't know anything about it, really. But 10-Yard Fight by IRM, football game. Be kind of a surprise if they went with that one. It was one of the earliest American football games released, but at the same time, I don't think it would be something that they would do. I think there's other stuff that would be a little bit more exciting to see. Bio Attack is based on a Fox property, so probably not. Exeron. City Connection owns Jalico's IP, and they get along with Taito. They had a pretty good deal with their Saturn releases going for a while. And Exeron's actually getting a remake, so it wouldn't surprise me if this was possibly one of the games. We'll have to see. I don't expect the Go-Go 13 title to show up, but Lupin the Third did, so that's why I'm mentioning it. Mach 3 is owned by Columbia Pictures. It was a I forget how to even pronounce it. The Qbert people made this game, so that's why they'd have to talk to Columbia Pictures. Ninja Kid, the progenitor of the Ninja Jajamaru spin-off that actually overtook this. UPL is already working with Taito on the Egret. They developed the Revenge of the Invaders, so it's definitely a possibility. Would it be as exciting as a couple of the other choices? Probably not, but it's an option. Mania is the first of the Technos games that Taito published. And quite a few of the games would go on to become some of the greatest of the arcade wrestling genre. But that would be in years to come, not necessarily the first attempt. But it's a possibility. Wrestling's popular all over the world. Samurai Japan is based on a baseball team, and I don't think that it does anything distinctive to show up, so probably not. Space Battleship Yamato is one of the Laserdisc games. If any of those were to show up, it would probably be Time Gal, not a licensed one, even if they got the license back to re-release it for the Switch collection. Tiger Heli, the first game with Toa Plan. Very possible. Extremely possible. Empire City 1931 is Saibu Kaihatsu's title. Hamsters re-released it on Arcade Archives, but that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with Taito, beyond a shared partnership with Hamster. It's a possibility, I'll just say, because the company still exists in some format, even if Hamster's the one that owns the property. I don't remember if they bought this company or not. Get Star's another Toa Plan game. It's not one that's as well known as their shoot-em-ups or Warder, but it's a possibility. Now we're getting into the stuff that I think has a really good chance. Renegade and Double Dragon at the bottom here. Two huge opening salvos for Technos' biggest properties. Renegade is the launch of Kunio-kun, and of course Double Dragon is Double Dragon. I think that if any third-party title has the highest odds to jump on here as a new company that Taito has not worked with, it is these two games. And I would prefer Double Dragon because I think it's a little bit of a better game, but both are important and both would be interesting. There's also, in the middle here, Zane de Selena, which I remember looking at but don't remember particulars, but it's a little bit different from these two games. Sky Shark, another vertical shoot 'em up from Toa Plan, that Taito did also release a home version for. That's a possibility. Cyber Tank would require getting Band Presto involved to re-release, but I think it's a pretty notable release for Taito. Gang Hunter is another Saibu Kaihatsu game, but I don't think it's as well known as Empire City. Heavy Unit would require figuring out who has the IP from Kaneko's Dead Corpse. Rally Bike is a racing game by Toa Plan. Superman, of course, from DC Comics. Demon's World, or Horror Story, another Toa Plan title that's a little bit less known. I think it's a action game. Rambo the Third would again require getting Sony involved. Toki, who I don't know who owns the IP for Toki. That was such a mess with that remake that I don't know if Golgoth, who made the remake, owned the IP or they licensed it out from somebody. I couldn't immediately tell, and I didn't want to fall down a rabbit hole. But it's a possibility because Taito did publish it. Zero Wing, another Toa Plan game. Probably, if I were to pick two Toa Plan games that would be likely, and they have had at least two, technically, in the two expansions so far, it would probably be Tiger Heli and Zero Wing, because I think those are the two that make the biggest sense. Vizco, we got a couple of their games on here. Ashura Blaster. I don't know anything about this one. But I believe Pico Interactive owns all of Visco's stuff now, and I don't know if Taito would want to work with them. Gal's Panic, I don't expect that to come, even if they did work out the rights. Success Joe is based on a manga series owned by Kodansha. Acrobat Mission is another UPL game. Could be interesting to see that one show up. I don't know much about it. And we also have USAAF Mustang, which I believe is a shoot 'em up, based on this particular plane, which might require some licensing on that front. Fix 8 is, I think, one of the last Toho planned games on here. That one I talked about when I talked about Volume 2, because it looked interesting. I wish I remembered more about it. But, like I said, I'm going to cover the games that I think I would like to see the most at the end. We just got to get through all this stuff. Animal Land is another manga, so Kodansha would have to be involved. And Power Spikes 2 was a pretty successful game, volleyball. I don't know who owns Video Systems stuff, because they've been gone for a while, but some of their games have been re-released, so somebody does. Don't know who it is. Somebody does. And that's it for all of the licensed things. So, my thought on the licensed stuff is that I think we're going to get probably no more than 3. And if I had to pick 3 out of these games that require that extra step, I think out of Toho Plan stuff, it would make sense to do Tiger Heli or Zero Wing. For Arc System Works, it would be Renegade or Double Dragon. And then, in terms of fame and, like, universal appeal, it would probably be Mr. Do if they could work out something with Universal. Or, it would probably be something like Sauron. Those are the 6 games that I think have the best odds. Alright, Arcade Archives. Let's just quickly run through those. There's a few titles that we will not see because of the screen. So, Darius Extra Version, the Ninja Warriors, Darius 2, and Warrior Blade Roston Saga Episode 3. I don't think those are going to make the jump because of the fact it would require some finagling to get them to work on a single monitor, unless they've already done that. We've already had Taito go above and beyond by replicating a mirrored monitor setup with Wyvern on the last SD card. So, anything's possible, but I think those are less possible than others. But when I look at the list of games that they've put out, there's a couple that stand out. Frontline, probably one of the biggest titles that hasn't been included as of yet, and it's from 1982. So, I have a strong hunch that that's our old game, because it is a fairly prominent Taito release that has not seen the light of day otherwise. I also want to point out Typhoon Gal, which was from 1985. Taito had quite a few women starting to be in as main characters at this point, and Typhoon Gal is one of the first. I think this game's pretty interesting. I liked it when I played the Arcade Archive version of it. I think it would be worth including, personally, so I hope that we do see that one. I talked about Empire City, Renegade, and Double Dragon as all having pretty good odds. Kuri Kinten. This game was one of the very first games Taito gave Hamster to put on Arcade Archives. I want to say it was like the first 3. And it was on the Taito Legends compilations. It seems to be something that they have some pride in, so I'm surprised it hasn't gotten onto the Egret yet. So I suspect that might be one of them. I also have a pretty strong hunch that we're going to see plotting or flip pull. It's a good puzzler. We've had good puzzlers show up, and we have the majority of the rest of them on the Egret 2 Mini spread out, and I think flip pull's the one that's missing. Dead Connection is a very recent release, or is going to be. It's going to be on Taito Milestones 3. I don't think it's actually come out on Arcade Archives yet. But that game looks really sick, and it would be a great addition to the Egret, especially since we know Taito's thinking about it. And then we have Dino Rex, which is infamous. It's not a good game, but it's a really fascinating game. I bought it, I played it. It's a wild experience, but it's really, really interesting. It's a cool game, and I think that it would be a fitting addition to the Egret 2 Mini's Arcade Memories Volume 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to help myself by just dropping some asterisks here on some games that I think have pretty good shots out of this pile. And I'm going to probably do 12, because the Toho Plan games were not really touched on in that. And I do think that Tiger Heli and Zero Wing have better than normal odds. But there's two other games that I do want to include as well. And we do need something from 1995. Actually, I'm going to probably do like 15. I'm going to do 15. We're going to go for it. We're going to have fun. Okay, so this puts me at 9, and we already know Galactic Storm. So I'm going to find 5 other games to talk about on this list. And let's start with where we know the end cap is, which is 1995. There's a couple here that I think could stand out as really compelling titles. And the first is Psychic Force. It would count. This is, if my memory is not mistaken, it is a early 3D fighting game where you are flying almost all the time. We haven't had a 3D game show up on here yet, but I think that it would be one of the most compelling ones if they were to do it. But there's another option that I think is also likely, which is Space Invaders 95, The Attack of the Lunar Loonies. I have played this one, and it's kooky. It's a very silly 90s Taito take on Space Invaders that I think would be a good fit for the Egret 2 Mini as well. Alright, that puts us at 12. I think Vertexter is one of those games that could show up on here as one of those, ooh, look at what we're doing type of things. Because Taito's done that with the Egret 2 Mini. And this is an F-Zero-like racing game, and it looks really cool from the little bit I watched of it. So I think that there's a decent chance that this could happen. It would be really cool if it did. What are the other two games that I'm thinking about? Arabian Magic. Another one of their beat-em-ups around this time frame that I think is pretty solid. And we've gotten just about all the other ones. So it's time to get that one on there. Chase HQ. This is probably the biggest property in terms of an IP that Taito has not brought back onto the Egret. There's several of these games that have come out afterwards, and there's even a spin-off that made it onto Arcade Memories 2, which is Crime City. So I think that that game might have a chance to make it, because I think that they would probably try to work that out. Alright, I have sorted those 15 games into a very condensed list, which is a lot easier to read. But I think these would be the among the titles. Taito will surprise me. They really did last time. They went into some places I did not expect them to go for the Egret 2 Minis Arcade Memories Volume 2. Wow, that's quite a mouthful to say. That's my thought. Those are my thoughts. Would you like to see what these games actually look like? So that way it would be a little bit more exciting for you? Let's do it! Alright, I have gone and found these 15 games. They're in the order of year release. I think we'll watch about a minute. I think I'll go ahead while we're here. I'll give a shout out to the various channels that I'm going to be using footage from. So, Nenriki Gaming Channel, Random Gaming Moments, World of Longplays, Game Archive, No Commentary Gameplay, AL82 Retrogaming Longplays, Retro MVG V624, Mylstar Electronics, Millstone in Japanese, and Arcade 60 FPS Attract Mode. So we'll talk a little bit. I've played a few of these, but not all of them. So, and some of these will probably have some intro stuff that I'll try to skip past. But here's Frontline. It's a very silly looking game, honestly, but I think it's a pretty solid enough run and gun of the era. I think this beats out Capcom's Commando and certainly beats out SNK's Ikari Warriors, which I think are the other two like really big launchers of this genre and the specific military theme. Sega had like Ninja Princess around this time frame as well, but it's a pretty notable game for them. And again, it's a little surprising it hasn't been included up to now, but I think it has the best shot of all the 1982 games. Alright, Typhoon Gal. It's a pretty neat game. You play as Yuki. And you have to beat your way through various Karate Champ-esque challenges, but with far more movement. And it's a comical game. Like, you can just see in the expressions of both characters that it's intended to be goofy. It's one of the earlier games that I think Taito really nailed that. But it's also pretty hard. And I think I got past this guy, but the next one was just like, whoa. So it's a cool game, and I think it would be a worthy one to include. Another one that has a very similar name that I didn't put on this list because I don't think the technology is quite there is Time Gal. And if any of the Taito LD games were to be picked, it would be Time Gal because it's one of their most famous IP from the 80s, I would argue. But I don't think that they're going to shove that onto the Egret 2 Mini on an SD card. I think it will be too much of an ask. Tiger Heli. Let's go ahead and just skip ahead a little bit. Perhaps better known from the infamous Micronix port on the NES, which is one of their better ports, which is just a funny thing to say. This is one of Toaplan's earliest games, and would kind of set the stage for so much of their output. There have been so many follow-ups to this game. But for 1985, which I believe is when this came out, it's pretty impressive. While it would be simpler than, you know, Slap Fight and Twin Cobra, I can't remember the Japanese name other than Ends in Tiger, I think it would be something that could be a good inclusion to have. And of course, Double Dragon. Hopefully with less flashing. I'm gonna skip past the part where Marion gets punched in the gut. So, the biggest issue possibly with Double Dragon is that it has some slowdown when you've got a bunch of guys on the screen, especially when you play two-player. And it's a little bit unfortunate, but hopefully Taito might be able to do something to help that a little bit. I think that's one of the reasons why, outside of the Arcade Archives released, Arc System Works just hasn't bothered to re-release it, because it would take quite a bit of effort to fix this problem. Chase HQ. The first in a long line of games, and one that I think the reason why Taito probably hasn't put this on here is because the original cabinet had like a steering wheel and all that, but they made Operation Wolf work. They made a light gun game work just fine with the controls. It was actually kind of impressive how good Operation Wolf controls on the Egret 2 Mini. So I think they could get this to work. But this was their answer to Sega's Superscaler technology. And it's pretty impressive in its own right. This is a good looking game for 1988. So, plus it has a little bit more going on with it. Because you have to knock people off the side of the road. It's a pretty neat game. Kuri Kinton is a pretty distinctive opening. Really catches your eye and kind of sets the tone for what Taito's like very surreal backdrops would become in some ways with that title screen. But again, it's a goofy game. I love that about Taito. They weren't afraid to be goofy. But this is basically like their response to an anime protag with the ability to charge up, like Dragon Ball Z, building up Ura to get more powerful attacks. It's also one of those, I guess this is a belt scroller where you just knock things out typically in one hit, so it just makes you feel really powerful. But it's a pretty neat game. And again, this is one that I'm surprised just hasn't been on the Egret yet. Alright. Flipple, or plotting. It's got cute little blobby mascots. Let's actually get into some gameplay here. So how this game works is you're this little blob, and you push your block in, and you want to have it hit another block of the same shape. So for this circle, you want to hit the circle. It'll knock the circle away, and then you'll get the block next to it. And so on and so forth. And the goal is to do this in as few moves as possible. It's a pretty cool concept. It's perhaps not Taito's most beautiful looking game, but the blobs are cute, and it's got a pretty good soundtrack to it, so I would like to see it. Alright, our other Toa Plan title is Zero Wing, which lacks the infamous, and I've been saying infamous a lot today, but I think it's appropriate for this, infamous Zero Wing intro with cats. It just jumps right into the gameplay. And this is a super solid horizontal shooter from Toho Clan that I think deserves to have a spot on the Egret 2 Mini alongside all the other great Toho Clan games that have made it so far. So I would be pretty happy to see it. And here's the one we know is on here, Galactic Storm. And this is why I think Chase HQ has a pretty decent chance, because this is also a super scalar game, and it's very similar to Night Strikers, which came out on the second Arcade Memories. We'll skip the plot, we'll jump into the gameplay. Here we go. So that's a really attractive, like, eye-catching thing to see, and then you start the game by pushing start, and then you get this great launch sequence, because Taito and the ability to really have the small details just captivate you right off the get-go. This is only 360p, so you're not going to fully enjoy this as much as you would if you were looking at a real arcade cabinet. And this is like one of the best videos of this I've seen. But it is gorgeous. Like, you lift off, you could land, and then here comes the action, and it's just right off out of the gate intense. Like, you feel like you are in an anime, just weaving your way around, and that is one of Taito's big strengths, is just pushing limits. This is such a cool looking game. I really hope that it plays as good as it looks, because I'm very excited about it. Next up is Arabian Magic, and we'll just jump to stage 1 here once the title goes. I think that's a pretty attractive start screen, but this is a beat 'em up. It's got a pretty distinctive style to it. Probably not too far mechanically from Growl or Runark. But you do collect money for points, and I think that actually translates to you buying stuff. It's been a long time since I played this. But it's just a really pretty sick game, and you can play with 2 players. You have really neat enemy clear attacks, because you can find magic lamps, and I think the genie helps you with your attacks, and they range from the 4 characters, if I recall correctly. Zoom ahead a little bit, because we can get a sense of the boss, and then here's the magic button, and you can become the genie for a little while, or the genie will help you out, and just take care of that boss. It's a cool game. Dead Connection. I actually have not seen this in action yet. So, I read up a little bit about it when the Taito Milestones 3 lineup was fully confirmed. That is absolutely not intended to be Marlon Brando. Yeah, a little bit on the violent side. But let's go ahead and skip to the gameplay. So, this is a bit like Cabal, where you are towards the bottom of the screen. Actually, no, it's not like Cabal at all. This is a very unique game. It's kind of like if it was a light gun shooter, but you have free movement and you can see yourself. And look at the detail. Like, the stairs are all torn up. There's stuff on fire.
Damn it.
This is kind of sick. Knock the chandelier down. I suspect the person back there you don't want to actually shoot.
Don't return them alive.
But you can find stuff in the environment. Pillars could break, I bet.
They'll kill you. They'll kill you. They'll kill you. They'll
And we got a boss down there. How cool. What a neat looking game. Dino Rex. What a wild game this is. We'll skip the plot. We'll jump right in. There's a lot of plot. Like, an excessive amount of plot. But you pick a dinosaur. They have their own distinctive moves. But, like, the stages are enormous, and you kind of push towards the corner. That helps a lot. You can get some really interesting combo stuff in this game. But it is not your typical fighting game. And I want to say, like, you can attack the beast, the person directing the beast, so to speak. But this is just a sick-looking game. Flavia agrees. But it gets really hard, and it is not the smoothest to control. Alright, so this is the attract mode for Vertexter. It's the best looking footage I could find of this game. That'll give you at least a sense of what to expect if it's selected. But I could see the F-Zero-esque comparisons a little bit better. But, ooh, look at this neat little turn. Yeah, using the scaling sprites in a really interesting way. And just being very Taito with how that game looks. There's not too much more we're going to be able to see of that, so we'll move on to Psychic Force, which again would be the first fully 3D game to be on the Egret 2 Mini, but it's a fighting game, probably Taito's best known fighting game franchise out of all of them. We've seen a couple. Kaiser Knuckle is on there already, and then Dino Rex, of course. But, this is a very different style of 3D fighter. But it's a neat one. Because you can loop around or go above or below. And it's very projectile heavy in contrast to some other 3D fighting games. This series would have another 2012, which did come out on the Dreamcast, which I guess is apparently super rare. But this would be neat to have this part of Taito's history and start getting into their 3D stuff, because it's a little bit less known than their 2D. And last but not least, we've got the Attack of the Lunar Loonies, which has a bunch of cameos from other Taito properties. We saw Sayo-chan there for a minute, and I believe the blonde woman is Miyu-chan, which is her sister in the Famicom game, otherwise known as Becky in the Pocky and Rocky localizations. But this is a kooky take on the franchise. I like it quite a bit. I enjoyed it when it was on Taito Legends 2, but it had some emulation issues with some of the games. But I think this would be a pretty sick ad, and is probably, unfortunately for Psychic Force, the more likely 1995 game to make it into the Egret 2 Mini because it's all 2D. We will see, though. We will see. Okay, that's a lot of speculation and Taito talk. Let's go ahead and call this an episode before I think of adding to it. Thank you for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful set of days until we see each other again. Take care.